Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another episode of the Kast, and today I brought in Force to talk about Diablo 4. How you doing, Force?
I'm well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am, like I told you earlier, sleep deprived from playing No Man's Sky until 3 in the morning. It's good times. It's a good time to play some No Man's Sky. But we're going to be talking about Diablo 4 because we just had the beta. And I know that you've been covering it extensively. Like, is there a reasoning behind that before I bring out your little bit of your background? Like, is there a particular reason why Diablo 4 kind of like stroke your fancy?
I mean, I think, frankly, anything... any output from Blizzard, I will be curious enough to check out, just because it's. I think with like a lot of people, I have a history with the company, or anyone who has a history with any company playing their games as a kid. You're going to be curious as to what they're working on next, with all of the necessary caveats aside, from Blizzard or pretty much anyone who's been around for 30 plus years in the games industry. It's like, wow, a lot of stuff happened in between then and now. but yeah, I mean, it looks like a cool game. I like the Diablo franchise. It's not like we get a metric ton of new ARPGs to check out, and I like that genre as well. Blizzard actually produces a lot, or has in their portfolio, a lot of games in genres that don't get made, like RTS games and MMOs and ARPGs. It's like there are things that they make more than FPS, right? Which is, I feel like, half the games industry, indie games and FPS games. So
yeah, we're getting tons of FPSs nowadays. I seem to remember that back in the day, your channel when I first came across was actually Force SC2 Strategy, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I started the channel in the summer of 2010 when the Starcraft 2 beta was happening. And like I said, I was a big Blizzard fan. I played Starcraft 1. I played the Warcraft RTS games. Like, oh, this looks awesome. And I remember just watching other people on YouTube. It was like Husky and HD Starcraft at the time were the two. They were just like they were primarily broadcasters that do like color commentary for the game. And I was like, oh, this is cool as hell. What if though, like, I was like, what if we made a video that was like guides? Cause that's what I was looking for. I was like, how do I do anything? Like, how do I do stuff? And so, yeah, I was just like, let me just, I mean, I'll try it, whatever. I'll see what happens. And it's so funny because back in that day, the YouTube landscape has changed so much. Like, you didn't think about starting a YouTube channel because you're like, I'm going to make money, which I feel like a lot of new channels nowadays are like, oh, wow, this is a career. You can do it. Back then, it was just like, I don't know. I want to make nerd videos for other nerds to watch. Like that was the angle at the time. But yeah, I started in StarCraft just because I was interested in it and thought I could make some content. I didn't think it wasn't good. I didn't think it was going to be good, and it wasn't good, but somehow it worked. So
I think you even made a couple of videos with TotalBiscuit back in the day, right?
Yeah, I knew TB through StarCraft, and then we became friends over the years, primarily online, right? Like a lot of people in this space, you mostly know them online. We met a few times in cons, but we played StarCraft a bit. We played a lot of games. Rest in peace, John. Miss you, Thomas.
Yeah, I miss John
I think of so many times when whatever's going on, a new release, or if there's some drama in the industry where some company is like, damn, I'd love to hear what he would have to say about this. But we did stuff with TV back then. It was a lot of fun.
But yeah, I think the first time that I even came across channel, I mean, I remember the SC2 stuff, but one of the things that I think I tuned in religiously was you had a Diablo 3 podcast at some point as well.
Yep. I did that with Sixen. I don't know why Kevin was his real name. I did it with Sixen. He was around during that time, and then Jesse Cox.
Oh right, it was Jesse as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew him through TB mostly. Well, through TB, and also because I used to watch his WoW content because his channel is OMFG Kata.
Yeah.
It was for Cataclysm. It was for what he did, like whatever playthroughs and stuff. And so yeah, I did a podcast with him, and I think it was once a week that we did it. It was a ton of fun. I can't believe it. Nowadays, I'm like, I don't know if I can do a podcast. It's like, bro, you did it 15 years ago. Like, you can do it if you wanted to, but
it's like, as someone that played the crap out of Diablo 2, I remember back in like when we were about to get Diablo 3, I was consuming every form of media that I possibly could. I'd like tune in religiously all the time, listening to the podcast. It's like, oh, this is good stuff. Just put it on the background and whatnot. But yeah, it's It was old days. Since then, just to give my audience a little bit more background, you've actually even played Dark Souls. That was surprising for me. I did not expect you to play Dark Souls. You did cheat though.
Why? Why is that?
I mean, it didn't seem like the kind of like it almost feels like it's one of those things where you see certain creators and they just kind of like become Blizzard creators.
Oh, sure.
And you just kind of like fit that shell, you know. And when I first saw you play, I actually went out. You were streaming it on Twitch or something, and I was looking at it. I was like, oh man, this is so fun. Just like actually seeing you figure stuff out or whatnot for the first time, because I've played the crap out of all the Souls games and stuff like that. But yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, that goes down. Playing that game goes down as one of my favorite. Like the initial window, basically what I remember specifically, it was like a couple years after it had come out, and I was watching Summer Games Done Quick, and I was watching people do the speed runs. And I was like, this looks freaking super dope. And so I was like, I'll try that. And what always happened is I got to the third mob and died. But I actually vividly remember the route was to go down. You had to go down to like the I forget the names, but the forest area where there was a knight on a cliff, and I had to try to kick the knight
Black
off the
Knight
cliff.
halberd.
The Black Halberd, exactly. And so I think it was a strength build, if I remember. It might have been like a B or C scale or whatever.
Yeah,
but
it had good strength.
Yeah, I just remember doing a speed running with Black Halberd, and to this day, whenever I play any Souls game, I'm like strength two-hander, like that's what I'm doing. Elden Ring got me to play with magic a little bit because it was super busted and a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
But mostly I'm like strength two-hand builds. That's what I'm playing with, and it's all because of that stupid. It goes to show you we have like zero control over what we do in our life, because the only reason that's the case is because I watched a speed run, and then I just like carried that with me for like 10 more years of like, this is just how I play these games now. It's kind of ridiculous.
It was just funny. I always like seeing new people get into Souls, because when I first started making content for it, my objective was really, I need to get more people into this game so that this company makes tons of money so that I make more of this game, because I like this game.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I also, the first Souls game was the one, but what I was saying with that story was I initially started off like, because I saw that speed run and I was like, I got to try this, but I remember my wife was away on a trip for a week, and so it was just me in the house, like back to my degen days of just like no lifing shit. And so I was just playing Dark Souls nonstop all day, ordering Domino's pizza, just like for a week straight. And I'm just like, that's like cemented in my memory, that exposure. And I dabbled a little bit with the subsequent releases. I probably think I played the most of 2. Most of Dark Souls, then of 2. And I only played a little bit of the other Souls games after, a decent amount of Bloodborne. But then Elden Ring kind of pulled me back into the fold because it's just phenomenal, dude.
It's like their masterpiece, pretty much. It's really good. The biggest complaint that the community has on that one is that not as much replayability, but that's because there's just so much content that when you're done, you're like, that was a lot. I don't feel like doing that again, immediately after. Whereas the other ones are like you finish and then you're like, oh, I want to go again and try this different thing and go again and try this other different thing. But yeah, that was good stuff.
For sure.
For those of you who don't know Force, there's going to be a link in the description to his channel and all that stuff. Nowadays you do kind of like variety content, even though I feel like your channel really exploded from Overwatch 2. Because I seem to remember you were like much smaller before Overwatch. Then Overwatch came out, it's like stratosphere.
Yeah, I definitely I'd seen a lot of growth in that time period. I'd say like there were a few big points for me. Obviously, Starcraft is what started it, and then I saw a bunch of growth with Diablo 3. And then I did just a lot of variety stuff, and then there was another big growth period with Overwatch. But honestly, I am as happy as a clam right now that I am mostly. I've been doing a decent chunk of D4 stuff recently, but I am still mostly just like I just talk about whatever games I'm interested in. And I love that freedom, because I'll tell you, when you like dedicate to a single game, it's just tough. It's tough when you get bored. When the inevitability of you getting bored, unless you're a D2 fan or like CSGO fan or a Dota fan, like you don't just play one game for 20 years. You eventually move on, and that shift is can be painful. It can be tough. I went through it myself, like with the channel, because like you said, Overwatch. In my Overwatch period, it was a year and a half of nothing but Overwatch, and swapping out of that, it's just a dip. It's natural because you build up a viewer base of like, we're here for Overwatch. Why is this guy covering, Heroes of the Storm? What is this trash? It's basically that's just it's the mindset. So yeah, I'm right now my channel is exactly where I want it to be. I'm really happy with it for sure.
Here's the Storm was the best MOBA. Let's just be real.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was like baby's first MOBA, but that was fine. Like I liked it. I don't know. I enjoyed it. It's cool to see your like the heroes of those franchises all hanging out.
The funniest thing to me about the Heroes days, because I think we even did a collab with Squadron, right? You went
That's right.
in,
With MF Pally. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
Pally
right.
time.
Yep.
But it's like the thing about Heroes. I remember people would complain. They'd be like, "Oh, I don't like the fact that I can't carry," and it's like, you don't like the fact that this game is too focused around team play. Okay, the team game.
Yeah.
You don't like that it has too much team play on it. Very well.
Everyone, you know, everyone's the hero of their own story. They want to be the carry, again, the pentakills and all that stuff, right? And I don't know. I mean, I remember messing people up with Nova. I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Dude,
it's not going to win the game, but
my biggest thing that I always have with Heroes was there was one time where Blizzard would do the thing with playing with the Blues or whatever, and they would bring some people from Squadron, and at one point I queued against them, and I don't know if you remember the community manager then was Trixler. He's a streamer now. He streams on Twitch, and so I basically went in there with the single objective of haymakering him through the. So I was like, I go to the lane where Trixler was, and I just kind of like gently taunt him to just like, oh, let's see if I. And he comes closer to try and finish me off, and I just move past him, haymaker him into the towers. Goodbye. That was fun.
Yeah, it was cool. I kind of just fell off once I started adding like 1,000 maps. I was like, I just want to play on that 1 3-lane map with a little like one. I forget the names at this point, but I know eventually. I remember coming back after a year break, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Such is the case with all live service games, though, right?
Yeah, that's the way to go. But let me gently nudge us back towards Diablo. So there was that event. It was like 2018, I think. That was a really tragic time for me when we're listening to the final part of the opening ceremony for BlizzCon, and in comes, I think it was Wyatt Chang, right? And he starts like, oh, and yeah, and connectivity and multiplayer and interconnected across multiple devices. And I was like, no. And then they announced
I hope it means console and PC. What is he saying?
Yeah, exactly. That was so bad. How did you take that, the Diablo Immortal reveal?
You know, I mean, it sucked, and the community response was, I think, justified in that not like the picking on of Wyatt and stuff. I always felt bad about that. In any game, right? You know, like that this dude is just making a game. He's doing his job, and he's there to announce it, right? He was just the messenger that everyone decided needed to be shot. You know, and that it's just like it's. Because yes, the idea that they thought like their big main stage announcement for their fan base, which up until that point was like 20 plus years of almost exclusively PC gaming, they had only like just started dipping into the console market at that point. I mean, you know, whatever. I think Starcraft 1 was available on like the N64 or some shit. But
yeah, that doesn't matter.
For the most part, they were a PC centric developer, and so I just think they misread the room. I think they misread the audience, and that's the other thing too. It's not just like, we got the hardcore nerds that are here buying $1,000 ticket and paying for room and board and doing all this stuff to visit us at BlizzCon, but we have way more people in the wider player base who are more receptive to mobile gaming, right? Mobile gaming is huge. Everyone like mobile gaming is bigger than all the other gaming things combined when it comes to revenue, and so they in their heads they must have been like, people will love this, but like. Those people aren't here. It's all your PC nerds that are here at BlizzCon. And so this main stage announcement, when people are expecting the next Diablo main iteration, it was just a misread of the room. And they didn't live that down. They didn't live that down for many years.
I totally didn't make like 6 or 7 videos talking about the fall of Diablo. No, I didn't do that. I swear. I would never.
Man.
But basically, I feel like that was the beginning of a really dark period for Blizzard, because it wasn't just around Diablo, and you obviously also play World of Warcraft. So I feel like you also must have felt it throughout a lot of the expansions that they released after that, which was like BFA after that, right? Or was BFA before that? I forget. I think it was after that. So it was BFA and Shadowlands, which were just two abysmal expansions, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's like when it comes to Blizzard, the way I view it is that just there's been this like gradual nudge towards, and they've always kind of been this, especially since the days of World of Warcraft. There's nudge towards this. They're trying to cast a very wide net. You know what I mean? They're not
Yeah.
just making this like game that was a claymation game turned into one of the first hack and slash ARPGs, all about the devil. They're like, oh, wait, well, what do I call the game? Devil? What's Spanish for devil? All right, let's go with that. But like, they're not that. They're obviously not that company anymore, and they've just been slowly nudging towards casting this wide net. And it just seems like with time, what that means is just a lot of more watered down mechanics and systems, and a lot more monetization. And I don't know. They've lost like an edge, I think, in a lot of ways with a lot of what they're putting out. That I feel like a lot of people think they used to have, and they did used to have in a way. But and yeah, I do, and that side, like that, just like feeling tone of what's going on with the company and what they're producing. Yeah, we can argue that the quality has certainly dipped over the years as well with stuff, but I don't know. I'm always hopeful, and I think if nothing else, they still make games that are fun, even if they're just to mess around with for a little while. Um, but I am pretty hopeful for Diablo 4, as hopeful as I guess I ever am when they're coming out with something new, a new iteration of the franchise or one of those new expansions, like you said. And
How
I mean, I think things are looking good.
how much did you play of Diablo Immortal?
No, not much. I just couldn't stomach it. It was not. It was not a game for me. Honestly, it was just way too much of the mobile, even in the PC version of the game. And I've got nothing against mobile gaming. It's a huge market. A lot of people really enjoy it, and there have been mobile games that I've enjoyed. The Hearthstone, I think is cool on mobile. There's like nothing wrong with it. It's like the same as Hearthstone on PC. And what else have I played? I played like the auto chess games as well. The Dota auto chess one, which is fun. But by and large, I'm just not super into mobile games. And so the Diablo Immortal thing. I mean, there were some cool things about it because I liked like the MMO stuff. Their PvP stuff, I was like, why isn't this in like Diablo 3? Like this stuff sounds dope. They've got like these different factions and stuff. And I forget the fact that one of those factions is basically the pay to win faction, but it's like to be in the I think I don't know if it's the Immortals or whatever. One of the two factions is like, hey, you got a lot of really good gear. How'd you get that? The credit card, of course. So. But I mean, there were some cool ideas in there. I just couldn't stomach everything.
I actually didn't. I didn't like I played the whole thing because like I forced myself to play the whole thing. I shouldn't have,
Yep.
to be honest, because it was a miserable experience. But like I didn't even because you had that discussion where people would say like, oh, if it wasn't for the monetization, there's a good game here, and I was like, no, this is just a worse version of Diablo 3 for the most part. It just has. It probably has features that they considered using on the expansion that should have come after Reaper of Souls. And they were just like, oh, we'll just not use these here and use them over here, which is why you have like some of the cool things like when they're in the raft in the river and whatnot. And that's kind of like a neat thing. But it's like mechanically, I also didn't feel that the game was particularly good. And obviously it was pay to win as all hell. But yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, and it seems like they actually, from the little exposure I had, I think I probably played like 10 or 15 hours. It seems like they were pulling in some elements from Lost Ark and stuff as well. Because Lost Ark had things like those moving platform sequences where you got to like fend off enemies while it's happening and all that. And they certainly took some of the, hey, let's monetize everything we can. They took some of that spirit from Lost Ark too. But one thing I will say is, I mean, people were talking about, like you said, like they were like, oh, it'd be a good Diablo game if it wasn't the pay to win stuff. I was like, I didn't think the combat felt good.
Yeah.
And maybe my memory, my impression was clouded because of everything else around the game. But I'm like, this doesn't even feel as good as D3. So there was just a lack of that like oomph to the combat that I don't know, but maybe I'll revisit the game before Diablo. I actually think it's not a bad idea. No. I think it's not a bad idea, like academically. Like I should go back into it, so I just really know what's going on with that game, and so that I could draw parallels. Because if they're like, boy, this season pass is sure is reminiscent of the Immortal season pass or whatever the heck that it could be. I don't know. Maybe I'll give it like 10 more hours. Just I I promise I won't spend any money. God,
I mean, look,
no
you
way.
do you. I just can't recommend it because like I was so miserable by the end of it. I literally just deleted my character, uninstalled the game, never touched it again. I was like, dude, this was terrible. I hated every second of it, and I just did it so that I could be like, during those days, like right now, I don't remember because my memory is complete garbage. But I didn't want it to be one of those people that would go like, "Oh, Diablo Immortal is bad," and someone would ask me, "Well, why?"
Yeah,
And I'd be like,
exactly.
because it's bad, it's mobile, blah, blah. No, it's like during those days, if you were to ask me, I could give you like at least 10, if not 20 different things that were extremely problematic with the game. That nowadays, like my memory's just like, look, that was all trash. We're just going to flush that down the toilet. We're not going to remember that anymore. But during the days in which that game came out, I could have been very specific about, listen, it sucks because of this, this is bad. The combat here sucked. This is whatever. The one thing. Go for it.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say the biggest thing I remember that was, it was the fact that the items required to upgrade your power up your gear, basically just didn't drop when you were free to play. You'd get just like a couple a week versus you could buy them in these like $30 to $50 bundles or however much it was. And that was just like the main form of power progression. Basically, was like leveling up those gems or whatever they were. And so yeah, it's just gross. I mean, I don't know. That's what that market is like, though. That's what the mobile market is like, and that is ideally, knock on wood here, what they don't do with Diablo 4. That's what they've said they're not going to do. They've said they're going to keep it to cosmetic. Well, although one distinction I will make is I'm pretty sure, well, this was the case at least a few months ago when I made a video about it, but I'm pretty sure they have yet to explicitly say that there would not be a pay for convenience. And so for that reason, I am assuming some forms of pay for convenience are going to be in the game. And, you know, this video, we've kind of been all over the place here, but like, I'll just say this of D4, like the core game, I think is wicked good. I think they've nailed the combat. I think there's some really cool systems and there's a great foundation for them to build upon. But I do think when the monetization stuff starts to come in, like we're gonna, you know, XP boost, buying stash tabs, maybe buying character slots. I think all those things are in the cards. I'm not assuming those are happening, but I think they're in the cards because they've said no pay for power, but they haven't said no pay for convenience. They've yet to like come out and say this isn't gonna be a thing. And so I'm almost certain that some form of it will be a thing.
Yeah,
that's my guess.
I kind of feel that that's probably going to happen as well. I'm hoping it doesn't. I would love to be proven wrong by Blizzard actually.
I mean, we already know they're going to have XP boost. It's part of the season pass, they've said, but it's going to be in the free track.
But they said you can't get the. I think they've said somewhere that you can't get the experience from the season pass by skipping the
But what they haven't said is that we're not going to additionally have XP boost in the cash shop, right?
Yeah.
Is that they say, all right, you can't get the XP boost from the season. So I would just assume. I think anything's possible.
It sucks so bad, doesn't it? That you have to like get down to the nitty gritty when it comes to that stuff, right? You just have to like think about it. Okay, what is the monetization that they're going to be doing? Like, how deep are they going to be going into this? Because you just know that something is going to happen. Not to mention that the game is like ridiculously expensive to begin with.
Yeah, but at the same time, because it's such like because I think the core of the game is so good.
Yeah,
I think it just does have such a good foundation. I think people will just stomach it because it's just that's really where we are. It's so hard to find. It was like a breath of fresh air when Elden Ring came out because I was like, I just bought the game.
Yeah,
and I'm playing the game.
Feels
good. And there's a lot of game here, but it felt like novel because that's just not what we get in games anymore. And that's also I don't expect Blizzard to ever be that again. Maybe that changes with the Microsoft thing, assuming that all goes through. I don't know that Microsoft makes that any more or less likely that they're continuing to push in that direction. But it's like we try to enjoy. It's like you got a good piece of cake, right? But someone like dumped pepper on it. It's like, well, I want to enjoy the cake, so I guess I'll try to avoid some of the pepper here. I'll like poke around it and try to get into the sweet bits inside. But I feel like that's where, especially as like I'm a huge MMO guy, and like God, that genre is just screwed. Like it is New World's like
rough.
the only game that wasn't like completely over monetized, and they just added their season pass. Like that just happened. I just saw some video with Asmongold like buying his way to like level 100 or some shit, and I'm like, oh my god! Even like New World's got its problems, but we could at least point to it, be like, no, MMOs still come out that don't have all this garbage, and then they like threw in the season pass. I was like, all right, well, let's
never mind. That was so. Yeah. Oh my god! I haven't even been following New World for the longest time because I got a little bit bored of the way that they did their endgame, because like you had those, the most efficient way of doing stuff was to just run trains through the elite zones, and I was like, this isn't fun. Like these mobs can't do anything. Like look at them, they can barely register that there's 200 players wailing on them.
Yeah, and they take like 5 seconds to like notice that you're there too. Yeah, it's always like New World was always the game where you'd run by a mob and they'd like slowly turn around like
like, hey, you're not allowed here. What do you mean?
Yeah. Anyway,
but getting back to the Microsoft thing, do you think that that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing if they do end up purchasing Blizzard? Which right now I think it's looking favorable because the UK is like backing down or something. I think I heard.
Yeah, it seems that way. It seems like it's going to happen. And I mean, I don't know enough as to know whether or not it'll be a good or a bad thing. I mean, I don't think it will get worse. Yeah. If anything, like what we expect from their games and and the monetization side of things, but then also just like the types of games and quality that they're making, I don't think it's going to get worse through Microsoft. If anything, maybe being owned by Microsoft won't make them feel as hungry to like please investors necessarily. I you know what I mean, when it comes to like how they're trying to push like every like arrow goes up, like we're constantly making infinitely more money. Every new game we're adding another layer of monetization. I don't know, maybe it takes some of the pressure off of that, but well, I really couldn't guess for certain one way or the other on that.
Who knows? The one thing that has definitely gotten me to start paying attention to Blizzard again, I feel like, was Dragonflight, though. How'd you like Dragonflight? You played that, right?
I haven't jumped in yet, honestly. I know.
You haven't played Dragonflight?
Yeah, I assumed I was. I'm trying to recall. There was something else like keeping me busy at the time that I was just like, I'll jump in later. And it just hasn't come yet. But this has happened in the past before. I think Cataclysm, I didn't jump into at launch. And then like halfway through, I just jumped in. No one else was really leveling, but I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. Anyone else like this game? And like, no one's talking about it anymore. But I think I'm assuming something similar will happen with Dragonflight. I was either playing another MMO or something at the time. I really don't recall. But yeah, I assumed that I was. Oh, wait a second. When did it launch, actually?
It was November last year, I want to say.
Okay, I was preparing for a cross-country move, so
okay,
I have all the excuse that I need. Yeah, I was in the middle of moving I moved across the entire country, so I was a little busy with the nightmare that is that.
But it's like with the Dragonflight thing, it was before that expansion, all the other expansions that I kind of quit, which was like, okay, Battle for Azeroth, I hate this game, I don't want to play anymore, I quit. Shadowlands, kind of the same situation, I hate this game, I don't want to play anymore, I quit. And with Dragonflight, I was like, I like this expansion, I think this expansion is really good, I'm still going to quit because I'm not having a good time, because I like doing Mythic Plus, and the community around Mythic Plus just felt like terrible. Like, I feel like with the way that Blizzard has kind of like managed the game in the past, everybody is so focused on getting loot that they've forgotten that you're supposed to be having fun while you're doing the instances. And I was playing with friends. That was the worst part. And my friends were just like, we messed up this mechanic. This sucks. Why you guys keep sucking like this? And you're just like, okay, yeah, I think I'm done. I think you guys go ahead. You guys go and be mad every single night. I don't want to be doing that anymore. Yeah. Thank you.
So I mean, honestly, and WoW, the biggest thing that got me off of that treadmill was the fact that, you know, I would play an expansion and then I'd take a break and then I'd come back at the end and I'd be getting like blue drops that were like 50 item levels higher than what I spent weeks farming for. And yeah, that happens enough times that you're like, okay, so this isn't the point, right? Experiencing the new things and trying the new mechanics and learn. This is why MMO launches are the best, and it's why I am bummed that I missed Dragonflight. Even the expansion launch is because when everybody's learning stuff, that's what the genre at its best. When a new MMO comes out, when expansion comes out, everyone's figuring out the dungeons, trying to do the raid, failing together. It's the greatest. But once you get into that farming mode now with any MMO, because I've just been through enough of them, it's like I don't need to unless this is in service of something else. Like unless I'm farming the dungeons so I can do the raid, so I can do the world boss or whatever it is, or I'm farming for these power increases so I can whip some ass in PvP. Whatever, there needs to be a motivator beyond the numbers increasing. And that's also that's the thing with Diablo 3 that I'm hoping Diablo 4 can alleviate, is that greater rift grind, right? Like I go in and every time there's a new season, when I play Diablo 3, it's a ton of fun when I'm putting the pieces together, when I'm getting my build and I'm trying to get all these things and get these rolls and all that stuff. And then once I have it and I'm just leapfrogging greater rifts and I'm farming basic stuff, leveling up my gems, then pushing to a higher rift number, then going back to farming level. It's when it's just that up and down for infinity, I'm I'm good. There needs to be something else to work towards. And it's great when you do have that, but when you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, I'm just I'm out of here. So
I think it also has to do with age, because when we were younger, we'd probably be like, hells yeah, I'm gonna grind these greater rifts all day, baby, get all them drops. But when you're older, you start looking and you're like, man, it's is this time that I'm wasting over here? I mean, not wasting, because you are having fun supposedly, but it's is this really the most fun that I could be having? Just making a certain number go up, which you just get to a point where nah, this number going up isn't really making me any happier anymore. So
yeah. And again, unless it's in service of doing another thing.
Yeah, another piece of content or something that is actually going to be really fun, maybe.
Yeah, so your friends were banging their head against those greater rifts to the point where it doesn't sound. Maybe they were, but it didn't sound like they were having fun. They sounded pretty
Mythic Plus. It was Mythic Plus. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Oh, right. And but then so you're like, all right, bro, I'm out of here. And then you'll come back a couple patches later and you'll get quest gear that's better than everything.
I don't think because my thing has always been my favorite thing to do in World of Warcraft since they put in there was the Mythic Plus stuff, because I just like running dungeons. And if that's the way that the community at large is now looking at dungeons, which is okay, we need to do this thing in time because that's going to give me more loot. That's going to make my Raider IO, which is something that's not even in the official game, is going to make that number go higher. That's the important thing. And I was like, bro, I couldn't care less about my Raider IO. I just want to finish the dungeon because that's fun. I want to finish the dungeon on a high number because it's challenging and it's fun. Yeah. And I don't care about, all of the other systems that come behind it. But, a lot of people just want the reward. Here's the thing. In World of Warcraft, most people, if you gave them the option to just push a button to get imagine you have the Mythic Plus dungeon that Blizzard designed with the affixes, with all of that stuff. But then they just have a red button at the entrance of the dungeon where you press that button and you just get the rewards for completing that with a +2 key. Nobody would go inside the dungeon. And I think that's really sad. Everybody would just go in there. Oh, I'm going to press the button, get my loot and leave. And it's what the hell? Well, not nobody. Probably top guilds would probably still do it for the challenge or whatnot. But apart from that, your average player, they just go in there, boop, press the button. Here's my loot. I'm leaving now.
Yeah.
It's,
well, we can get back to Diablo at some point, but I just wanted to quickly say I just started seeing people running. I know it's always kind of been a fun thing, but it's more organized now. Have you looked at Classic Hardcore yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't looked at it. I haven't touched Classic WoW pretty much.
It looks so cool. So people are just playing it how Diablo has hardcore mode, right?
Yeah.
Your character dies, it's done. Well, they've got there's a server that everyone's playing on, and they're running these add-ons. That make it interesting, give you different objective and challenges, but it looks like a lot of fun. I don't know. I might have to give it a look. And actually, I've heard that there was some data mine information that pointed to the fact that Blizzard might actually be considering implementing it, which I think they've got it in their Diablo game. Why not throw a hardcore option in your MMO?
I think that the World of Warcraft team is actually doing a really good job at managing World of Warcraft with what I experienced in Dragonflight and how quick they were at trying to adapt to what the community was saying. Hey, we should maybe do this. We should maybe do that. They added that vendor, which is like a monthly thing that I didn't even experience the vendor, but just the philosophy behind it. It looked really cool because like, hey, just get currency for doing stuff that you're doing anyway. And then you get to buy these things that are like in the store that you usually buy for money. I was like, oh, that's actually good. And the fact that like, oh, you can store this item in case you didn't get enough currency so that you can get it next month so that the FOMO doesn't hit you as hard. I was like, wow, that's impressive. Like, it seems like it's a good system, and a lot of the stuff that they're implementing seems good. So I think they're doing good there. In terms of the getting back to Diablo, though, we had the Diablo Immortal situation. Now we have Diablo 4. And Diablo 4, I'll be real, I went into the beta, and my intention was straight up, because like you had the Mike Ibarra tweet, where he tweeted out and he was like, hey, if you're a creator and you want access to the beta, fill out this form, whatever. I filled out the form, and I got access, and I jumped into the beta, and no joke, my mind was just like, okay, we're going to play this. You're going to hate it. It's going to suck. And you're going to be justified in just being like, yeah, this game sucks. Just like I thought it was going to suck. I hate it. I can't believe Blizzard did this to Diablo. This is terrible. That's literally the mentality that I went in with. And when I started playing, I was like, oh, damn. It's nothing like that. It's actually really fun. Like There's a bunch of people that are sitting, like they're not even part of the development team. They're the people that come up with like, okay, let's figure out what the business model is, and let's do this season pass thing and the 4 days early access and all of this other crap. These are not the people that are developing the game, right? They're coming up with the business model, which is, I don't like the business model of Diablo 4 at all. But then you experience what the other people were working on, the developers, and you're just like, okay, usually I can tell. When you play a game, I think you can probably tell as well because you've played tons of games. You jump into a game and you can easily tell, okay, this is a game that was made by people who care, and this is a game that wasn't made by people who care. You can usually, like for instance, you look at Diablo Immortal, you're like, okay, the people who worked on this game, they didn't give a damn about what they were doing. Let's just be real. They're just like, this is a money extraction machine, and they put in as much effort as they had to extract money from you, and that's it. But I jump into Diablo 4 and I was like, no, okay, the people working on this game, they clearly cared. And that was very surprising for me because I didn't expect it.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a big distinction, right, between the side that says how are we making money and the side that's trying to craft an experience that people want to spend time with. And there'll be crossover because like the monetization people will be like, hey, we need to have some system in here that we can attach a dollar value to. But I would agree that like it feels like well and lovingly crafted in a lot of ways. And I don't know, were there any like what was so you said you dive in and you had this like positive impression of it, right? What about it did you like? Can I ask like how like what you played, how much you played, what kind of stuff you did?
So I basically no-lifed both beta weekends. It was pretty disgusting. It was like I literally just said to my wife, listen, these 2 weekends you have to take care of the kids. Daddy's not home. Like, look, I'm gonna be
He's away on a business trip.
I'm on like I went full DJ. Like I even bought like I went out before the beta was live, right? I went out and I bought like snacks and proper healthy food as well to just like have everything ready so that I wouldn't have to move too far away from the computer. On the first day, I even straight up had like a cold meal ready in the fridge. So it's like, hey, it's dinner time. Go to the fridge, boom. Because I was streaming it. I'm like, I'm not even stopping the stream to eat. That's how. So yeah, I no-life the crap out of it. I probably played like across both weekends, 40 plus hours, I think. So I played all of the classes. I didn't level all of them to cap because there's 2 classes that I personally don't care about. That's not to say that they're bad. I just don't care about Sorks and Rogues. It's not my thing. But I did play them up until like close to 20 so that I'd get an idea of how they played and, check it out against the other ones. So I explored every aspect of the game. And I think the most surprising thing for me was that in my first character, which was the Barbarian, I played the game for 15 hours and I had not repeated content. I mean, you can argue, on some dungeons it was the same boss, but technically speaking, it was a different dungeon, right? So I didn't repeat content. I was doing different dungeons. And I didn't, in those 15 hours, I didn't complete everything there was to do in the beta. And I was like, there's tons of content. The content that I'm playing is fun, which was, again, surprising.
Yeah, and I think and I felt it too. I felt a sense of like I do quite like what they're doing, but I really hope there's more. And I had to remind myself that there's a
It's a
lot
beta.
more. Well, yeah, it's a beta, and I know we're getting a look at a majority of the systems, but it seems as if, based on the game's map, and we saw people overlay the beta maps onto the map that Blizzard made available for the game. It looks like Fractured Peaks, the zone we had access to, is the smallest of the 5 zones.
Damn.
And on top of that, there is a 6th zone, Hell. We don't know how expansive that is. It could just be the size of one of the above world zones. It could be the whole map. We have no clue. We just have no clue right now. But there's going to be a ton of content. And I think definitely what's most interesting to me is how we're going to engage with those endgame systems and how the different things mix up. Like they have their Helltide events, they have the PvP zones. There's going to be the multiple world bosses, doing the various public events and the strongholds, and there's the bounty quest system, which it's like called the Tree of Whispers, where you're doing favors, but it's basically just like Diablo 3 bounties where
I actually recorded like a video. I reacted to that video that they put out of the Into the Endgame. And I was looking at that, and they were saying like, "Oh my God, we can't wait to show you this thing." Like they were talking about the Tree of Whispers, like it was this completely revolutionary thing. And I was like, "You guys did it. You did a really poor job of describing it. If it's as revolutionary as you are claiming, because this is just bounties from Diablo 3. Like there's nothing to it. I don't understand."
From what I understand, I've seen different leaks and talked about different leaks from the beta that have come out from the closed beta, and people are basically saying it's just like you're just doing stuff you're doing anyways. It'll be run a dungeon, it'll be kill this boss, and there's like the world bosses, but then there's just like elite bosses in the world. There was one of them in the beta, actually. There was like this level 35 elite to like the southwest of the map, and you can farm the highest item level gear from him, so I was doing the shit out of that. It wasn't totally necessary. Nothing carries over. It's just like something wrong with my brain. but yeah, so it'll just be quests to do stuff you're doing anyways, and then you fill up this bar, and then when you fill up the bar, you go to the True Whispers, and it just dumps gear for you. It's like a cash system, so it'll be like, do you want to cash a 2-handed sword? Do you want to cash a helm? You pick your cash and you get the loot. And like, yeah, it's good that it's there. It's because you want variety. You want to have like, you don't want to just be running nightmare dungeons, right? You want stuff pushing you in other directions. And it actually seems like that's how they're designing their endgame systems. Like, for example, I know the world bosses are supposed to be a good source for the resource needed to punch sockets into gear. I think nightmare dungeons are particularly to push the Paragon board. I believe that's right. Everything is going to give loot, right? And then the PvP zones will also give high value loot. They're supposed to be really dense too, like dense with mobs. So if you're farming legendaries, you could go there, and that's a great source. But it's the risk versus reward because it's PvP. So you could have a group roll up on you and take you out. So it seems like the bounty system, if nothing else, like, yes, it's just a quest system, but it's another thing pushing you to mix up the variety so that you're not just doing the exact same thing over and over again. And I think in service of that, it's fine. But then also to build up like daily quests, it's like, come on, guys. they're daily quests. They serve a function, but let's not act like
it's not that
like
big
something
a deal,
special, because it's a daily quest with loot at the end. But yeah,
but yeah, it was just weird the way that they were talking about it in the video. They were talking about, oh my God, we can't wait for you to see. And I was like, are you talking to people that didn't play Diablo 3? Is that because like if you play Diablo 3, you've seen something that's exactly what they described. But one of the things. Sorry, keep going.
I was gonna say I did notice that the reception to that video was pretty negative. I think it's got like 50% dislikes. I've got one of those web browser trackings, so I can still see YouTube dislikes. And it's got like 50% dislikes. And it seems like the complaints are mostly centered around the Paragon board, really, because none of this was like new information. Maybe it's new to the people who watched it, but all they did was give like a surface level introduction to each of the endgame systems that we've already known about. So this wasn't like they came out with some new details that like pissed people off. I think just seeing the Paragon board for a lot of people was like, you saw those memes about like, they're like, this system really changes things up. And then what they're showing on screen.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It's like, man, the editor, you should have just like, maybe they couldn't get authorization to show anything else, but man, you could have shown anything that was interesting besides. Uh, and you like, I get the complaints about that, but that stuff is just filler in between, ideally in between the good stuff that you're working towards, because you're just going down a branch until you get to the shit you actually care about. So like, whatever, +5 strike, +5. Like, I don't give a crap about each one of these nodes. It's the node that I'm going to that matters. And we just, that's what we need to know, is if the nodes we're going to matter. I think that's what most of the outcry was about on that video anyways, unless people were just mad about.
I was a little bit negative about it, but it's like the thing to me was also, you were saying like this was stuff that we already knew, but to me it's like I never really looked too deeply into it because I thought I wasn't going to like the game, so I didn't really research it. And so now that I've played the betas, I was like, okay, they put out an Endgame video, I'm going to watch this to see what the Endgame is and kind of like report on it and tell people what I think about it. And I just wasn't very impressed with what they were talking about. I was like, okay, so there's going to be dungeons, and then it's like there's even two devs, one after the other, where one says, oh, we're going to have lots of activities. And I was like, okay, can I get like 2 examples? No. And then the dev afterwards said, oh, we can't wait to share with you all of the experiences you're going to have. And I was like, we have activities and we have experiences. Can I get like 2 examples? Yeah, and it was like, well, you got the capstone dungeon. And there was also a dev that said, oh, and when you get the max level and you do a capstone dungeon, you're going to unlock the first world tier. And then they show a screenshot of the world tier, and I was like, what do you mean? It's like, you already have the first world tier, and then in the second world tier, you can play it from 1 through 50, so you're not going to need to finish the story or do a capstone dungeon, because you can just select it, I'm assuming. So you're going to unlock world tier 3. Is what you It's just kind of weird.
I don't know. Again, the editor, maybe the footage that the dude had wasn't enough, because when I saw that, I thought the same thing. I was like, why are they showing 1 and 2? You automatically can do 1 and 2. Why is that not just showing you clicking on 3? It's like I edit videos, less so now. I have someone who works with me on the channel, but like I get the time, I get when you're in the window of like, I gotta get this shit out. So like, just give me what footage we have and I'll do what I can. And it almost feels like that's what part of this edit was, because I'm like, this shit's not lining up like it should for like a Blizzard produced like big end game deep dive, or you know, whatever they consider that. And I do think they did themselves a huge disservice, because we know of interesting stuff. Like, we know from leaks, so the nightmare dungeons, you know, it's not just like, yes, shit will get harder, right?
And but they have affixes, we know that there's like going to be Plus, right?
Yeah, but there's like so one example that we saw was like there can be a nightmare dungeon. It's called a modification or whatever. So separate from whatever's going on with the monsters, you know, maybe the monsters are magma and they explode when they die. Okay, but then there's like one example was. Periodically a lightning strike would come down, and if you got hit with it, it was 1 shot. Doesn't matter how tanky you are, you got 1 shot. But also in the dungeons were these floating artifacts with like a dome shield. And so on top of running the dungeon with everything you're doing in the dungeon, killing the mobs, doing whatever objectives that dungeon has, the nightmare dungeon would also add an extra mechanic on top of it, not tied to the monsters themselves, but like another gameplay mechanic. And I thought that was interesting, and it really opened up my mind to different things they could do. Like, what if there was like a one modifier where it's like a Mario level and there's a flame wave behind you and you need to keep moving, and if you don't keep moving, the thing will kill you. It's almost like a battle royale wall. Like, maybe you could have a shrinking circle. Like, there's a lot that they could do. When I heard about that like lightning strike and dome thing as an extra layer separate of just whatever Affixes, monsters are enhanced with, that like, and so why are they talking about that? Like, and, like I can't believe it. Yeah.
And you want to hear one of the things that I thought was like the funniest thing is like when one of the developers starts saying like, okay, so let me tell you what is my favorite affix thing that we have for the dungeons, right? So we have these dungeons, and in this case, a portal spawns and random monsters that are not from the area will come out of it. And I was like, that's your favorite affix? Really? Like a random monster spawning from a portal? Like, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it also, like, no one gives a shit that it's not from the zone. Nobody cares what zone the monster is from. It's just a meat bag that you're attacking. It doesn't matter. It's like, I'm in the skeleton dungeon. Zombies are here.
Oh
Are you
no.
kidding me? I can't believe it.
There's demons in my skeleton dungeon. Oh no. But it's like when he said that, I thought to myself, I don't think I would be able to identify whether the monster is from the zone or not.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just gonna kill. I'm gonna press my skill button. I'm gonna smash it to bits. That's what I want to do. I don't care.
And that they should have emphasized. They should have emphasized the other stuff, whatever it is, like that lightning bolt. If they do like a magma wall, do the floor is lava. Have like patches that you can stand on, and periodically lava races up, and you got to be on the patch when it happens. Like there's so much different stuff they could do with it. And, we'll see.
The thing about it was also it was just like the stuff that they were bringing up in the video. It just didn't feel like they were justifying, like you were talking about the Paragon system, and it's like, oh, this thing's gonna revolutionize and it can spin and it can do all of these things, and then they show the nodes. I actually had to go frame by frame. Okay, I went frame by frame in that video, and I did find one legendary node. It's there for
they showed the cheap shot.
Yeah, it was like half a second or something on screen. I was like, bro, I had to like go frame to frame on YouTube to find this thing. This is the one important thing you should have shown. And even that one, it didn't feel like it was that meaningful. It was something like you deal more
crowd
damage.
Control something.
Yeah,
it was,
you deal more damage based on how many monsters are crowd controlled near you. And it's like, okay, I guess. I mean, with the rogue, I guess it's pretty big because you have the trap thing that knocks them down, and that counts as crowd control. So that's kind of cool. But yeah.
Yeah, people want to see exciting stuff though. People don't want to see flat percent. It's like one of the big complaints about the game's itemization is like, I don't care about a 30% boost. Like yes, I want a 30% boost, but it's not exciting. It's just something like, okay, well, I guess I just wish my skill was already 30% or that it was just in the skill tree. That seems to be what a lot of people are hinging on when it comes to the itemization.
We want stuff that changes the way that skills operate, but continuing on with the Paragon thing, one of the things that I thought was interesting was they had the cost to refund, which I'm assuming is the cost to refund one of the skills in the Paragon board. And it's like that particular character had like 4,000,000.4 gold or whatever. And refunding one skill was 50,000 gold. And I was just like, Rob Ferguson recently said it wasn't going to be prohibitively expensive, so maybe this is like old footage or something. But like that price is prohibitively expensive because you're thinking like, I mean, 50,000 gold when somebody has like 4 million, that's nothing. It's like, yeah, for one skill. Say you want to remove 10 skills, that's 500,000. Right. The 4 million doesn't look like that much anymore if you need to like remove 10 skills. It's like way too prohibitive. So I'm hoping that they cut that down. Like, where do you stand on that with the respec costs?
I understand what they're trying to do when they say like to have investment in your character. These games need gold sync for like inflation purposes. I mean, I guess they do, but I just feel like because the game is also built around a season system, like I don't want like 4 sorceresses on my Eternal Realm when I'm probably gonna be making a new one every season anyways. Yeah. Like I think they should just let us. I think respecking just should be fine. Like make it a little bit of a gold sync. And it seems like that's what they're doing. That's what they're saying. And like you said, who knows how old this footage is? That's also something they can just change on a dime, right? If they want to make it fit from 50,000 to 5,000, they can just put those values in, right? So we'll see where it ends up landing. But yes, I am hoping that you have your gold syncs fine, but make it so that if people want to try different things. And that was especially the case in the beta, and we'll see how this plays out on launch. But I'll tell you, every time I got a new legendary, I was swapping a skill a lot of times because I wanted to like, oh, here's a legendary for Frozen Orb. Well, I'm not using Frozen Orb, so let me move these skills. And that's the things. That's one of these gripes that I have. A lot of people have.
Tree. Oh my god,
it's just unbelievable. Like if I want Frozen Orb, I gotta take like 4 points out of the end and then drag back to Frozen Orb and then put those points in and then drag back and then. But sometimes they're like, oh wait, I can't quite take this out because it's connected to that node. So then I have to like go back and get another point. It's just like so unnecessarily cumbersome.
They need to basically have like a confirm system where it's like, okay, here's your points. Remove as many as you want, put as many as you want, and then hit confirm. And your tree needs to be like viable by the time we're done.
Once you hit confirm.
Yeah.
Like I should just be able to switch from, I don't remember what else was in the tree, but I should be able to switch from like flame wall to frozen orb right there, right in that core. I shouldn't have to
not
go all
go
the
to
way
the
to
bottom.
the end.
Yeah, that was dumb.
It just so I think enough people have expressed that feedback that I hope they can figure out a way to like code that in and make it how it actually works. Because the way it is right now is abysmal. And I also just don't like this is a minor gripe really, but I don't really love the whole interaction with the skill. Like I don't really love the skill twig as it is called, the skill tree. I almost wish they were just pages per section, like basic, core, ultimate. Instead, like the tree thing just.
It's like they had that idea where they had an actual tree in the interface, and you remember that, and they had like the icons there, and somebody over there is just like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever, bro. It's so cool. Look, it's an actual tree, and everybody else is like, no, no, stop, okay, listen, John, you need to rethink that one.
And it really is, it's just an aesthetic choice, right? Because you could just do like, say you had pages, right? And you can only you're on the basic page. You can't get to the core skill page until you spent 3 points in the basic page. Like you could just do that. It doesn't have to be this. It just feels cumbersome, really. The zooming in and out, the clicking and dragging of it. It just doesn't feel like really smooth. And they have, I swear, throughout the development, we have seen like different iterations of how they handled it. And I think they had something like that at one point. I think they actually did have like a tabs at the top that you would switch between the different things or whatever. But it's not game breaking. It's not going to stop me from playing the game. Thing. It's just, it is one of those minor gripes. And I've talked about it in my videos. There is enough that D4 does well that I really enjoy, that those little things, or like people complaining about the font or whatever, like,
like for instance, you give me like 40 hours more besides what was in the beta, right? Give me 40 more hours of that, except a little bit more polished, even if it has the same exact interface, and I'll play it. Yeah. It's not perfect, but I'm gonna play it because it was fun. And while we're on the topic of visuals, that was something that I wanted to run by you as well, which is, did you feel like watching a video of Diablo 4 doesn't really do it justice? Because what I felt from watching gameplay, I was like, oh wow, this doesn't look very good. And then when I was actually playing it, it doesn't look very different from what I saw in the video, but there was like a completely different vibe to it with the feedback that you are getting with the gameplay at the same time, more so than you usually get from other games, I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree. Some games, like if you look at like Doom Eternal, like when you see Doom Eternal gameplay, you can almost feel the gameplay. I don't think that translates as well, probably for ARPGs in general, but definitely it is the case for Diablo 4. Like that, it looks less fun to play than it is fun to play. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I have seen complaints about the visuals that people say the game doesn't look as good on videos as it does when you're actually playing it as well. I think part of that comes down to certain areas with like the atmospheric effects that they do, and just what video rendering does to that, and YouTube the bit processing. That. Yeah, like when you got, because they will have a lot of areas, because you know we're in D4. This is dark and gritty. There's a crap ton of fog and snow can just look really bad once you're going through rendering the video and YouTube processing and whatever bit rates people send their stuff out. Like it looks horrible. But when you're playing it, I think it looks way better when it doesn't go through all those layers.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of animation, how did you feel? Because I was like, I think and by the way, for context, you played on PC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I played everything on PlayStation 5, so I had a better queue experience than most people, because like not as many people were playing on PlayStation 5. I had tons of people who were playing on PC, and they'd come on my stream and they'd be like, streamer privilege must be nice, like Blizzard giving you priority. And I was like, no, dude, I'm just playing on PlayStation, and it feels like it's different login servers or something, because people were crashing all over the place, and I had, throughout the whole beta, maybe 4 disconnects, I think. Throughout like my 40 hours of playing the game, I must have had 4 disconnects. And in those disconnects, I literally just like re-queued. One of the queues was 50 minutes. The other queue was 40. And after that, I never had queues again. So I was like, okay. I didn't really have problems.
It could also be regional, right? From where you're playing, because although we're not logging into servers, we are logging into servers. And then based on the demand where you're located in the world, like that'll change. So that could partially explain it. Because yeah, there is crossplay, right? Like I'm pretty sure PC and console were all playing together on the beta. But yeah.
The how did you feel about it being an MMO? Because I know that you're really into MMOs. Me personally, I was like, I didn't feel that much of a difference. I mean, I guess I interacted with other players when I went to go do the world boss, and that was about the extent, because most of the other time, because I didn't really have any friends that were playing the game or whatever, so I didn't want to just jump in with a bunch of random people and like, oh, let's go murder a dungeon. Usually I like playing those with, you know, friends that I know in real life or something. But because I didn't really have any friends that were playing the beta, I mostly just played solo the whole way through. And I was like, this could have easily had an offline mode and it would still be really enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, so they're not doing it. They'll say for cheating purposes and stuff. And maybe that is true. But also the fringe benefit is you can't interact with the store when you're offline, right? So it's like a two birds with one stone kind of situation. In terms of like the play experience, though, you're right. I really like MMOs. Like I totally dig having other people doing stuff while I'm doing stuff. But at the same time, I feel like for the people, while you don't have an offline mode, for the people who are into more of the single player experience or they don't want to see people all the time, it did feel pretty selective. Like so the world boss, you're going to see other people. Public events, you'll see maybe 2, sometimes 3 people, but it's pretty limited. Pretty much the whole rest of the time, it's just you. Like because the map is just all of these little interconnected zones. They each have their own little names, every single little area. And as you're moving between the areas, it really is only the areas, it seems, with the public events. They're static locations. Public events are always in an area. It's just which public event will cycle. And same thing with the world boss. It's always in an area. But a majority of all of those little zones are like, it's just you. It's just single player. So it seems like they just use phasing. And when you're in a group type activity spot, which is a small percentage of the total map, you'll see other people phase in. But the rest of the time, it's pretty much just you. You might occasionally see somebody run by, like as you're going down a path or something. Maybe you see someone run in the opposite direction. But it is a lot of, and then in the dungeons, it's entirely instanced. So unless you're physically grouped with someone, it's also just you in the dungeon. So basically, if there were times where I wasn't like farming public events and I was just going through doing questing, it's just like you'd see a person running by here and there. And then town is densely populated, and then there's a decent amount of people in the mini towns where they have like the fast travel locations. But like if you're just looking for mostly solo play, you can pretty much get that. And the only time you're going to see other people is when you're in those other people areas. So I think it's a pretty good balance. I love it when other people are around, just because it can make for some funny moments. You know what I mean? Or there's like this, so for me, like I was saying, there's this level 35 elite in the beta. We can farm him for high eye level gear. And so there were people there. Normally I wouldn't expect it, but there were people there just because there was a ton of other people who were doing the same thing. And so the game's like, all right, let's like phase these people together. It was just, yeah, I like it, but I do think like if you don't like it at all, with just some exceptions, it can feel like a mostly single player game. But I get the gripes, like people want offline. I think they should offer it, but that's just not what they're doing. That's just not. I don't know that. I would be surprised if we ever saw a single player offline game from Blizzard going forward. It would just surprise me. It would be cool, but I don't expect them
especially
to do that.
Considering that even with Starcraft 2, you couldn't play the campaign offline. Actually, no, you could play the campaign, but you couldn't save. It was just like, you can't save your progress. So it was so weird the way that
doesn't even make
worked.
sense in StarCraft 2 because they didn't have, at least not when they launched, right? I don't remember any cash shop. I think they might have added cosmetic stuff over time. Like I know they added the co-op commander thing or whatever it was, but
yeah,
I don't think at launch there was any shop really that I recall. So
they just wanted everybody in BattleNet. But it's like even with the whole cheating argument, to me it's like, well, you've had Diablo 2 in the past, which had like closed BattleNet and open BattleNet. So if you wanted to bring in your like single player characters, you go to open BattleNet and you'd see all kinds of crazy stuff like barbarians hitting you with swords that spawned hydras, and you're like, okay, how does that work? That's a little bit weird. You just whirlwind and like 10 hydras showed up. Okay. But if then you had closed BattleNet, which is where you would go if you didn't want it to deal with all of the cheating and all of that stuff. And
I think the main argument for that though is that if you have, not that I agree with it, like I get shit offline, get rid of all the cash ops. That's the dream world, right? But I think the main argument against that is that if you have any sort of offline mode, that means all of the game files are on people's computers, and at that point, it becomes a whole lot easier. If you're not having half the game on the computer and then half the game on the company servers, that's a lot harder for people to crack versus all the shit's on my PC. But
yeah, there's that as well. But it's like, again, I just feel like an offline mode would go such a long way for the community. But it is what it is. In terms of moment to moment gameplay, how did you feel about it? Like, which character did you do first, and how did that feel? Was this the first time you were playing? I don't think so, right? You've played before on some closed test, or no?
Yeah, I played a few years ago at a BlizzCon. I believe it was 2019. Obviously before the pandemic happened, but so I played then, and then I played last fall in like an early preview event. I had played for like 40 or 50 hours during that event, and then these betas. Yeah. So I mean, the gameplay's good. It's like it's how I basically feel about D4 in general. If I were to have a little synopsis for it, is that like the gameplay is enough to carry me to play the game. All the other systems, any concerns or criticisms of the game, we'll see how those fall when the game releases, and then how long I end up sticking around with all that stuff in mind, and how the end game loop is. But gameplay just feels great. It's something that Blizzard, in my eyes, has always done well. I mean, they just make games that feel good to play. Overwatch felt good to play. Hearthstone feels good to play, and it's a card game. Heroes of the Storm feels good to play. Starcraft, Diablo, it's just like they make games that feel really good. They really nail the low latency. They really nail their animations. They really nail their sounds. Everything that's associated with what it means for a game to feel good. Blizzard just does a good job. And it was like surprising to people, right? I remember when Blizzard made Overwatch, it was their first FPS. And like, this is like a really good feeling FPS, which is hard to do. A lot of games, a lot of companies can't quite nail the gameplay, but Blizzard just seems to pretty much always get it right. So yeah, I mean, I have really no complaints there when it comes to how the game feels to play.
I didn't know that you had played throughout all of these different things. How much evolution would you say that you've seen from each iteration that you've played up until like the recent betas?
So honestly, the only gap for iteration would have been between the 2019 test and then the one that I did in the fall, because that one is basically the same build, it seems, as the one we just played in the betas. There was no. So wait,
that build is from fall last year.
November actually. So yeah, like fall into winter. I don't know exactly what day it switches over, but whenever the winter solstice. But yes, yeah.
That build is from November last year, so it's already like kind of like a pretty, well, not really pretty old, because like 5 months, give or take. Okay, but it's
and
still...
there could have been some iteration, but as far as I could tell, everything was the same. I mean, so there were some missing textures, and there was some like Microsoft Voice, like text to speech dialogue in there. So there were differences, but content wise, everything was identical. Okay. It seems like they probably polished it up a little bit, but in terms of what we saw and what there was to do, it was all the same stuff. But yeah, game. I think the game feels great. I mean, it's funny because I don't know if you're into many other ARPGs, but I've dabbled with all of them. I've tried them to varying degrees, and people love Path of Exile, and I think it's an amazing game. It's done some incredible things. I played it like when it first entered alpha. It was like 2012 or something, like a very long time ago, and the game's come a long way, and it's really built up a great fan base. But every time I go back into the game, like just the core immediate gameplay, it just doesn't. It doesn't hook you. They just don't have that oomph behind it. They don't have that really kinetic feeling gameplay that D3 had and that Diablo 4 has as well. And that's not to take away from what Path of Exile does right. And I've heard people say gameplay feels better once you get your build going and stuff, and that's probably the case. But just right out the box, like you smashing crap with even your basic skills, and D3 feels and in D4 feels really, really good.
Yeah, I think that I have tried other ARPGs in the past as well, but there's just something about Diablo, and it's several things. It's not just the gameplay itself; it's also the actual environment of Sanctuary. It's just a place that, in a way, it almost feels like home for someone who's played Diablo for so long. You're like, oh, I'm back in Sanctuary. This is cool. This is badass. And other ARPGs just have like their own worlds, and I think that there's a ton of them that are really cool. But it's different, and there's just some things that feel better when it comes to Path of Exile. For instance, you're saying some people say it feels great when you get your build going, and then I look up a video of like somebody speed farming maps, and I was like, I don't think this would feel that great for me. Like, look, I'm not saying it doesn't feel great to the person that made this build, and it seems like they're having a blast. I'm just looking at a bukkake of special effects on screen, and everything is exploding in like a nanosecond, and I'm just like, this doesn't seem interesting to me personally. Like,
I think that's also just a style of ARPG endgame, because D3 has the same thing when you're pushing rifts and you're doing speed clears.
Yeah,
it's just like you're just screen wiping, right? And I suspect, I know D4 has a slower pace generally, but I suspect there will be at least some type of gameplay experience that is that, like Path of Exile had. I am really dropping the ball here. I forget the name, but one of their end games says Chaos Dungeons. Path of Exile had Chaos Dungeons was, I'm sorry, Lost Ark had Chaos Dungeons, which is basically that. It's just the like blow up everything on screen, but then they also have their more precise gameplay where you're more paying attention to positioning and the various boss fights and other stuff, and the hunts that they have, like the Monster Hunter style hunting in Lost Ark. So I suspect D4 will be similar, where we'll have these different endgame systems, and one of them will be like Endgame Path of Exile, like Diablo 3's Greater Rifts, like Lost Ark's Chaos Dungeons. I suspect there will be something. Maybe that's what the Nightmare Dungeons are. We'll have to see. But the general pace of it is slower, which is nice. I like it. More deliberate.
I'm hoping that that's the design decision, because I think I've heard in a video that was like a design decision from them. They said, oh, we want something a little bit more deliberate, and I was like, I like this slower paced game as opposed to just like explode everything, even though on the last couple of days of beta, I have the exploding mist affix with my necromancer.
Oh my god, dude.
So disgusting. So Jesus Christ.
It was so good. And actually that does circle back to the discussion about like itemization and legendaries. I think at least, from the playtime I've had right now, that should be their target. Not how OP it was, because you can tune damage numbers, so it's not so ridiculous, but legendaries that do that make such a drastic change, that just like your mist, which was prior to this, your mist is just like AoE damage and invulnerability. Okay, cool. Invulnerability is awesome. I can dodge some big boss mechanic that I can't move away from in time. Great, I'll do that. But then for it to turn to instantly pop corpses, like that's sort of a drastic shift in how a skill functions. I feel like that's what legendaries should be. And maybe that's, because we know above legendaries, there are like unique items.
Yeah.
And so maybe maybe they're making that distinction where uniques are like that. But I get it. Like, a legendary that increases 30% damage, it's just like, it's not exciting to find.
Yeah, it's not.
I would be happier if they like tightened the faucet on the number of loot drops and had fewer loot drops, but when the legendaries and above that did drop were like you just got you going, you know what I mean? We're like super exciting.
So I know that you're big into mouse and keyboard because you're mostly a PC gamer. Did you try out controller at all, or no?
No, one of my friends did, and he said he really liked it. And I, and that brings up the whole conversation. That brings up the whole conversation about WASD, because basically what a controller does is it emulates WASD and mouse movement, because you have one input for character movement and then you have another input for moving and attacking, and they're separate. So the two joysticks on a controller do that. You move with the left, get aim with the right.
You don't really do it like that in Diablo 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, you don't use the I think the right stick doesn't really do anything.
It doesn't aim?
No.
You can't. Are you serious?
You aim with the left one. It's weird, yeah.
So you move and aim with the left?
Yes.
Wow,
So like if you're
that is
so
not
if
what
so
I
if you're
expected.
trying to kite, you're literally going like left and then back hit and then left and back hit and yeah.
Oh, that's gross. I don't know why they did that.
I
That's well, what or so what did you not like that? Because I
no,
feel like that sucks.
no, I love playing with a controller, but it's like I pretty much since I played Diablo 3 on consoles, I was like, I never want to play Diablo with mouse and keyboard again. Like that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
But in consoles, they had a different function for the right stick. In consoles, back in the day in Diablo 3, right stick would dodge in the direction that you wanted to. So like you'd input the
Man,
direction.
I am actually like I haven't used this word in a long time. I'm gobsmacked. I am so surprised that I really assumed and I
That you would
expected
aim
that
with the right stick? No, not at all.
yeah, that's crazy. Okay, well then maybe there's more reason why they don't have WASD movement because I was leading up to a complaining about the lack of WASD.
Yeah.
But I guess if the controllers function that way, that it makes sense.
Yeah, but it's
Damn.
like the controller to me is like super solid. It has a couple of downsides. So like specifically with skills that have a very specific target, like say the sorcerer's teleport or even the sorcerer's firewall or something like that, where you want a very maybe you don't want to target a monster, maybe you want to target like a specific area on screen. That's where the controller kind of falls a little bit short when compared to mouse and keyboard. But it's still very playable because usually your average player, even if you're playing mouse and keyboard, you're not like, oh, I need to pinpoint accurately teleport in this exact pixel. It's like, no, you're kind of just like, around here, teleport there, boom, done. And the controller kind of does the same thing. It kind of like estimates kind of where you want to go. And it's like, okay, I'm put your skill right there. And I love playing on controller, and I played PS5. Apparently, people told me that you can't hook up a mouse and keyboard to PS5 for this game, which I was like, why wouldn't you? That's stupid. You can do that in Final Fantasy 14. You can literally hook up mouse and keyboard Final Fantasy 14, play it just like you would play on PC if you want to. So there's no reason for Blizzard to make that distinction, in my opinion.
Well, especially since it's crossplay. Especially since it's crossplay, it doesn't quite make sense. And maybe they're worried about third party. Because you can you can hack third party hardware, right? And then you're plugging in like a tweaked mouse and keyboard. Maybe they're worried about that.
You can plug that into a PC. You can plug a tweaked mouse and keyboard on PC as well.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of like the reasoning behind not supporting that. It is baffling, frankly.
Yeah, it's weird. Especially because they already done all of that stuff on the PC. So there's no. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if you know, but like the PlayStation also has a different HUD.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like on PC.
Oh yeah. The
one on the corner.
Stuff's like in the corner, right? Yeah.
It's the setup for couch co-op because you can do couch co-op on consoles. I didn't really test it, but people were saying that you could do it in the beta as well. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Because I've done a ton of couch co-op back in like the PS3 days, even on Diablo 3, and it worked really well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I'd like it. It's just I like my mouse and keyboard as well. I mostly play it at the computer, so
you got to try it sometime though. You should try it because it is very different. Like the whole thing of you actually being on control of your character as opposed to doing click to move. It's a very different experience, and I totally recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I remember messing around with add-ons and using controller support to play WoW. Even just
yeah, that was a mistake.
But it's actually pretty cool because you're right. It changes the feel of the game because when you have the right add-ons and all this stuff, it makes WoW feel like an action combat game when you play with a controller instead of just like a regular tab target MMO. And it's kind of interesting.
I did Savage raiding in Final Fantasy 14 with a controller. No problem.
Yeah, I mean,
no downside. Yeah,
maybe this is what we get out of the Microsoft acquisition is that we get WoW on Xbox.
On Xbox, yeah. I like. Right. Listen, even though I'm not playing it, I'm all for it. I think it'd be cool to have WoW on Xbox. Hell, I think they should bring Final Fantasy 14 to Xbox. I don't know why they still haven't done it. It's kind of dumb, but whatever.
Well, they're drawing those lines, but I don't know. Sony and Microsoft not good friends right now. So.
Yeah, they don't like each other. It turns out it's weird. But another thing that really surprised me with the beta experience was the amount of effort that they put into the story and cutscenes. Like, did that surprise you as well?
I'm very sorry to say.
Oh no.
that I am that when the cutscenes come up, I am spamming a particular button.
Oh man, damn,
You know,
dude.
everyone, and you know what? There are actually plenty of games that I play to enjoy the story. But loot games and MMOs, I cannot be fucked. Like I just get me out of here. I want to blow stuff up. I'm trying to level.
So have you
I'm very
seen
sorry.
those on YouTube at all yet, or not even?
Yeah, and I know that that's a big thing, right? Is that they're integrating your character models and whatever you're wearing at the time, however you look, right into the cutscenes, and that's really cool. It's like there's been a debate, right? Because people are like, "Well, Diablo cutscenes have always been so high fidelity for the time," and yada yada yada. And D4 does have some of those, but the ones where it's like in engine with your character, obviously it doesn't look as pretty, right? Maybe they throw some filters on it to buff it up a bit, but it's still very cool. Like for the immersion, for the people who aren't me and who want that immersion and who are going through for the story and they want to, you know, follow whatever's happening with Lilith. So again, I'm so far removed. But I do think it's really cool. It's just not what I'm playing these games for. I don't know if I'm ever gonna see the story of Diablo 4.
Oh man, like because like that was the thing with Diablo 3. I was very, because like I do like the story of Diablo. I played Diablo 1, I love Diablo 2, played that hell and back, and literally apparently. But with Diablo 3, the way that they handle the story, I was just like, okay, this is terrible. Especially as someone who came from Diablo 2, I was like, bro, I don't know what you guys were doing with the story. This is atrocious. I don't like it at all. So I went into Diablo 4. My expectations were like, whatever, the story is going to be trash. So the way that they did it, and they actually take the time with the cutscenes to tell like what seems like it's going to be a fun story, I was just surprised is all. It's a damn shame you didn't see it, dude. Damn.
Maybe I'll watch it. There's just, like I said, there's something wrong. Look, I tell people my favorite genre is MMOs, so you already know like there's a screw loose. There's an issue here.
This is why you don't play Final Fantasy 14.
It's just the dopamine chase is too high for me. I cannot deal with the drudgery. Numbers must go up. I must be destroying things. Experience. I don't know. Loot needs to be dropping. Otherwise, I'm just like, what am I doing here?
Okay, I was gonna.
Maybe at some point I'll check out the story. But
I was gonna ask you how you like the side quests, because I saw some side quests that were pretty fun. But now I'm like, well, that probably doesn't matter either.
Hey, you know what? There were the ones that I was forced to sit through that they didn't let me skip were pretty cool. So. You know what it is too, and like I said, I'm the same way with MMOs. What I mostly come for these games for, and it might sound like a contradiction, but I mostly come for like the world building, and I love when a game's play space builds atmosphere. And I feel like really, frankly, with so many video game stories that I'm just hearing the same story all over and over again. And I just feel like at some point I just checked out, because I'm just like, it's just all different variations on the same. We got like the hero's journey. Here's the big bad here's the big bad antagonist, and oh wow, it's really tough. We all almost die. One of my friends are killed, but we saved the day. But oh no, they're in like hibernation, or like their son is now gonna come to avenge it. So anyway, but I do dig like the atmospheric world building in games. It's what I love about MMOs. It's what I love about a lot of these different games. And when a game does that through the game experience, separate from whatever direct narrative they wrote down and are retelling, I have a lot of appreciation for that. Absolutely. And the stories they get built with the players. That's what I really, really like in these online games. At least
you ended up missing on a really cool meme, which is your character gets drugged very early on, and then like not even 5 minutes afterwards, he's already accepting food from a complete stranger again. They do that in Diablo 4. Like you literally, you go to this town, they drug you up, and then they're about to chop you up. You get saved, and then you instantly go to another house, and some guy's like, "Hey, I'm gonna make us dinner," and you're like, "Cool, I'll eat it." So yeah, it also has some of
very
those.
forgiving.
Yeah.
Very forgiving character.
So I'm assuming you played all of the classes?
Yep.
Which class did you enjoy the most?
Well, I always like the melee classes. So Barbarian was fun. I liked how broken the Necromancer was. It was just
Necro
doing
was
that,
busted.
getting that legendary with that corpse explosion, blood mist thing was a whole lot of fun. It was hilarious. My friends were super pissed off. They're like, dude, you're just killing everything. We're just following you around picking up loot. I was like, well, I'm just really good at this game. So, but I really like the sorceress. I played her quite a bit, and that's the one that I like focused on, if anything, trying to try out different builds and stuff. And there was this really cool like conjuration build where basically the sorceress's special is you can have like a passive version of any of your skills. So like every skill that the sorcerer has like a passive version of it that does something unique. So really, really cool. And I did the one with the ice blades, I believe they were called spectral blades, or I think it was ice blades. So basically what it was like that after X so many seconds of cooldown usage, it summons up an ice blade. And so it's just like you got a bunch of cooldowns. I had different barriers like ice barrier, fire barrier. God, what else did I have? I had the hydras on there and then a couple of other long cooldown skills. And you're just like spam. They call like I think they're called like the piano sorcerer or whatever, because you're just like spamming your cooldowns whenever they're off cooldown. And you're just summoning up a ton of ice blades, and so you'd have like 5, 6, 7, 8 ice blades all roaming around. Plus, you'd use the legendary that has 2 hydras, and you're super tanky because you've got the fire shield and the ice shield. It was fun, and then also it's super broken. I don't know if they're going to change it, but if you're playing on a widescreen, which I am, you can teleport across the map. It is there's just no range limit. You just put your mouse all the way to the end. And I saw people playing on ultra wide, so it's like twice a wide screen. So you'll just have black bars on the top and bottom, but you've just got like this huge panoramic view. It's like almost 360, and you're just like it's broken as shit. Well, I don't know why there's not a range limiter on that. That is going to be so busted in PvP. I mean, I'm all for it if I'm playing that class, but
they're probably gonna patch that. But yeah, that's a whole different level of pay to win. You're just like, I'm gonna buy a super monitor that's gonna give me an in-game advantage.
I know. I mean, you can play it on a 16:9 monitor. It's just like you'll be here, and the whole thing will just be in like the like it's like 3 inches, and then all the way across your monitor.
See, we have to see this as an opportunity. So people would do that, then they would hopefully put like the game on the top portion, then on the bottom portion they can be watching YouTube videos, podcasts, videos from you, videos from me. Sounds good.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, which if you had to rank the classes like real quick, so obviously you like the Sorc, like just real quick off the top of your head, like who would be the next one and then all the way up to the bottom?
Well, from the beta experience, for at least for me, and then
just in terms of taste, not in terms of power, like the ones that you like.
Yeah. I would say Sorc, Barbarian, Necro, and then Druid, and then Rogue, actually. And I know Rogue is supposedly really good. I had a friend playing with different builds that was really strong. But I just I like the class fantasy for even how broken and not working it was. The Druid, I just think it's cool. And also power-wise, I've heard that like things flip on their head, and then come Endgame, it's like Barbarian and Druid are just like dominating things. But that sort of tuning is just constantly in flux. It'll change every season. It'll change with patches. So I try not to fret too much about it. But I like wizards. I'm either playing like the warrior or the wizard. That's usually how I am with MMOs and RPGs. So
I actually made a really good druid build. It was really good. It kicked ass. It was amazing. All it took is for me to spend a bunch of hours getting like every single legendary you possibly could, min-maxing the crap out of it, and eventually it did work. But good God, it took a lot of effort to get it to work.
I just hear that resource generation gets better for both the barbarian and the druid, and then once that's the case, it's less of a struggle. You're not just like constantly trying to build up your, what's it called, spirit for the druid?
Yeah, it's spirit
or something like that. Yeah, you're not just constantly trying to like starving for spirit and just smashing people with a wolf claw or something. So
it was really funny seeing like the Asmongold highlights of just going like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. It was just like going crazy. That was some fun stuff. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about itemization, like how do you feel about the legendary affixes only being able to like being placed once? So like you can remove them, but back in like Diablo 3, there was a system you could just like, oh, here's this legendary affix, and I'll have it forever. Whereas in here, it's like, here's this legendary affix, I can put it into literally one item. It's like it doesn't feel like it's a good idea because like what are most players going to end up doing? I was thinking about this. What are they going to do? They're going to be like, well, I'm going to take this affix out and I'll see you at level 50, I guess. Is it level 50 max or is it 100?
100, yeah. Level 50 is when we're supposed to be finishing the campaign, but
And then you
level
go to
100 is the
100.
cap.
Yeah, then
Apparently,
it's like, well, I guess I'll use this thing. I'll yank this thing and then I'll use it at level 100 because, like, you don't want to waste a good affix on a level 30 item when then you're going to level it up. It's going to be dumb.
yeah. Well, it seems like they're kind of split the difference, right? Because they have the Codex of Power, which is the aspects that you get from the dungeons.
Those were
And there's
terrible.
some
Though.
like
Like,
120.
did you see
Yeah,
any of those that were good? Because like the ones that go in the Codex of Power, I was like, okay, these suck. Like most of them were just bad.
yeah. It does seem. There were some good ones, but I agree with you. And then there's also the fact that for whatever those particular legendary powers are, it will be the weakest roll of the possible range. So say like something is like enhances an ability 30 to 50%. The Codex of Power version, the legendary aspects that you get from the dungeon completion will always be that lower end, that 30%.
Yeah.
It'll be the lowest possible roll. So the way I see it is like they're using this Codex of Power system to help get people an easy way of getting a build started rather than just relying on loot drops or like gambling. Like in D3 we're gambling blood shards.
Yeah.
Here we're gambling oobles or whatever they're called. And so like I think that's cool, but yeah, to your point, there's this whole range of, I think it's twice what's in the Codex of Power of other legendary aspects that you can only pull from gear, and it is only a one-time use. I don't know. It really depends, like how much that sucks or not really depends on how much are we getting those. You know what I mean? Like how many ones, because in the beta, we're playing on the tier 2, like once we're going into tier 3, tier 4, and I think there's a 5. I know there's at least 4. I don't remember. It shows it in the endgame video, but whatever the highest tier is, I mean, maybe we're getting legendaries with all those aspects just as frequently as we're getting yellows now. And if that's the case, maybe it doesn't matter that you can only pull it once. But I don't know.
That actually reinforces my point. If you're only getting that at like tier 5, that means that throughout your leveling experience, you're not really going to be experimenting with it because you're going to save the stuff that matters. I don't know, it just feels kind of weird. Like I want to be able to experiment with stuff as I'm leveling up, and I think that makes sense because I didn't even know you could only do it once. So for instance, the exploding mist thing, I had one and it was like a level 1 knife. And I was like, okay, I don't want this. So I just got like a level 10 weapon or whatever it was, and I was like, I'm put it here. And then I wanted like, okay, now I have like a level 15 weapon. I want to put it there. And it's like, it's over. And I was like,
yeah,
the fun stopped. What do you mean?
Yeah,
it was weird.
And I agree that sucks. I remember accidentally nuking a piece of gear that was an imprinted aspect, which means it's just like it's something that you pulled from another thing and you can't pull it back out. You have a good point. I almost wonder if a better system would have been, because they still want people hunting for gear, because that's the entire point of the game. It's the entire point of the genre. You're supposed to be grinding for gear constantly. But maybe what they could have done instead is have literally all of the legendary powers in the Codex and just keep the lowest roll thing, right? To keep it so that it's always the worst version. And that way you can still do your build. Once you've unlocked something, you can keep your build. And then you can won't have to rely. Exactly. And then you can optimize it by farming for the better rolls.
Yeah, I was even thinking like, okay, if you don't want people to like have these super powerful affixes by the end, fine, make them roll lower in terms of like the level of power, make it roll lower on these lower levels, but let us reuse it multiple times so that we don't have to like, okay, I really need to think, do I want to use this at level 30 or do I want to use it at level 100? It's like, it's the whole thing of the hoarder mentality that most of us have where it's like, okay, I'm going to save all of these potions and all of these things because I might need them later. Yeah. And then you never use it. Whereas if you were just allowed to use it more freely, it would just be more fun. It would just be fun. Like, that's it.
And I actually didn't know until we really started diving in. I didn't realize that not all of the legendary powers were in the Codex. We do know now, though, that evidently it's only half of the total powers. And I guess I hadn't really thought that through, but I think you make a good point, and maybe that would be the answer, is if they just give us the lowest. Once we unlock it, just let us keep the lowest roll version of that in perpetuity, so we don't have to feel like boy, I really want this extra Hydra, but I'm getting gear that's like 30 levels above what I have, but I haven't found a replacement, so I'm just using this piece of garbage
Yeah.
until another Hydra aspect drops. So
It never feels good when you have a piece of build defining gear, but then the item level is so low, and you're just like, bro, this is terrible. Like I remember in Battle for Azeroth, I had a very similar problem where Protection Warrior to be viable, you needed a very specific Azerite trait, which was related to Thunderclap. And in my case, I picked that up at like a super low item level, and I had items that were like 100 item levels higher than that. I still couldn't use them because I needed that trait. And I was like, bro, this is ridiculous. Like, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a frustrating thing, but it's also it's so interesting, right? Because this is a loot game and they're trying to incentivize the loot versus, because you could just say, well, this is annoying. One answer would be just put all the shit in the skill tree or put it all on the Paragon board.
Yeah, you don't
gear
want
just
that.
be stat sticks. So yeah, I just maybe that is a answer, is if they
like, because you still
utilize the Codex of Power more.
You still want the joy of finding the item, being like, oh, this is a build defining item. This is awesome. But then it's like, oh, now my build is dependent upon this item, and they're gonna take it away. That sucks. Finally, the one thing that I wanted to ask you about is, like, you look at these ARPGs. We talked about Path of Exile earlier, and it's like, I feel like Path of Exile is one of those games where, okay, you want to play Path of Exile, let's go to YouTube and watch like a spreadsheet video where they're going to tell you everything that you need to, put it in, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And Diablo 4, from what we've seen so far, I don't know how complex things are going to get once we get to the Paragon tables, but it's a lot simpler. And in my opinion, I find that to be a good thing, but I saw a lot of people complaining about it during the beta. They were like, oh, this is too simple. I want something way more complex. I'm just like, I just feel like that could potentially not be the audience that Blizzard is going after. Like, what do you think about the simplicity versus the complexity, like Diablo versus PoE, whatever?
Well, I think there's no question that isn't the audience they're going after. I did a whole video that was basically talking about this, where it's like, look, Blizzard is looking to target towards mass market. You could almost argue they've done that with every single game post WoW. That has been their audience. They're taking a concept and they're trying to polish it up, make the best gameplay possible, like we talked about earlier, and then make it so that a lot of people can that it's approachable for a wider range of people. I do though at the same time agree that there could be that extra layer of depth and complexity, right? Because you can really ease people in with simple systems and mechanics and a simple skill system and a simple loot system, and then move towards complexity with time. And maybe that's what they do with the seasons. Sometimes I feel like we hinge a lot on this, and God knows that the live service thing is a very sharp double-edged blade, because it's great in that if you have a game that you love, that game gets continued support. It's the rough side of that is that if the game falls off, it doesn't get the continued support, and then this game you loved might just disappear. Now, that hasn't been the case for like Blizzard games. Blizzard has continued to support their games, at least not Thanos snapped them off the face of the planet. But anyway, the point I was going towards, though, was that I think it's possible, either from things they haven't shown us yet that might be there at launch, or with time through the seasons, that they add extra layers of complexity beyond what's there at the moment. But there's really no question that they're not looking to make a Path of Exile competitor. They're looking to make a game that people who would never touch Path of Exile want to play. That is the core of what they're aiming to make a game for. But there is a middle ground, and I think that they could get closer to appeasing those hardcore ARPG fans, the people who still play Diablo 2 after over 20 years, or the people who play Path of Exile for thousands of hours. And it's funny because even with all the complaints, I feel like a good portion of those people will still play Diablo 4. Yeah. It's just like, will they play it for a few weeks every season, or will they play it nonstop like they do with those other games? Who knows?
I think
we'll just have to see.
One of the problems with this complexity thing is that I see a lot of people, they're coming into Diablo and their expectation is like, oh, I think I even saw this comment like verbatim in my stream. Someone was saying, "I'm not sure if this game is going to hold me for 1,000 hours," and it's like,
Okay.
a
Yeah.
1,000 hours.
Look, I've been there. You know, I remember like the coming off of the years of WoW addiction, being like, you know, I need something else that functions as a life replacement for me. Um, I don't really approach games that way anymore. I am happy if I sit down with a game and it gives me a solid 40 hours. I am thrilled if a game gives me even more than 100 hours. Um, but people look for different things, and people are at different points in their life, and people want different things. Some people want games that they can play for years, and they want to invest years, and they want to feel like everything that they're doing is meaningful and long lasting. I'm just not there anymore. I was though, so I'm sympathetic to it, and I get it because I played WoW nonstop from the launch of original classic of vanilla through Wrath of the Lich King. That was the game that I played. I did not play any other games, and I just don't game that way anymore. But I do appreciate that some people want that. It's just I'm not in that headspace anymore. So yes, I hear ya. Hope you find it, but when a game isn't that, it just doesn't bother me at this point.
To me, usually I look to get, like I told you, it was like 30 to 40 hours. And this one, I'm like, needs to be a little bit more because you guys are charging like ridiculous prices for this game. So whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like 40, 50. It's like, to me, that's it. Like that. I don't look past that. It's like, if I get more than that, okay, cool. Really good game. Like I played 2,600 hours of Monster Hunter World and Iceborne. I've played probably over 1,500 hours of Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak. But it's like, if I had played 100 hours of those games, still be pretty good. It's like, hey,
yeah,
it's good. It's a good 100 hours. It was fun. It's whatever. But yeah, there are people that expect way more. I just feel like coming into a game with the expectation of 1,000 hours off the bat is, I don't know, maybe it's just not reasonable. Because like, you could also not get, I mean, you could get 1,000 hours out of vanilla WoW if you wanted to, but you're going to be doing a lot of the same content throughout those 1,000 hours.
Yeah, and I think it's also like we're spoiled for choice, right? Like there are so many live service games out there, so many MMOs that historically have given us some people though that amount of playtime. Or you look at even just like stuff like the Dota and the CS:GO, like there are games out there that are very well established as games that people sink thousands of hours into. And yeah, and but then at the same time, those people are like, hey, I want something new, but not every game can or will be that 1,000-hour thing. Yep. It's like the lightning in the bottle. You know, you only get Minecraft once a generation kind of thing, or Fortnite or WoW. And those are the games, those things that just come together and are just unique enough and fresh enough and that keep people really invested for a long period of time. And it would be cool if every game was that, but it's just not that's not reality. And so it's like an expectation setting thing. It's like, could D4 be that? Maybe. I don't get this feeling that it will be that for me, but I'm also okay with that. Like it's not, that doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me dislike the game or not want to play the game because I won't get 1,000 hours. I don't know how I'll find 1,000 hours. So yeah.
Anyway, that's gonna be it for this podcast, team. You guys will be able to find Force in the there's a link in the description. Go check out his channel, go subscribe, do all the things. You probably already know about Force if you're here anyway. But what are you gonna be working on?
Well, we'll be covering some D4. I actually my buddy and I have a D4 dedicated channel now, just because I want to talk about and cover the game more, but like with where my main channel is, I want to keep the variety. I don't want to just go down the path of me just like mono focusing on a single game for a year straight. So we have a D4 channel. And
I'll put that in the description as well. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, if anyone wants, it'll be like news and updates for the game. So we'll be happy to post like a 10-minute video of like, hey, Blizzard said this, here's what we think. But that's not my main channel. My main channel is more like crafted. I'm writing scripts and really thinking it through. And I'm just going to keep up the variety, doing previews and just covering stuff that I'm interested in. I don't know if you followed any of the day before drama that's been happening over these. Just what a fiasco, man.
Oh
and
my
so
God.
Stories about the industry that I'm interested in. And the funny thing is, I'm not like I don't really hinge onto drama. But when I get so intrigued when it's something that like piques my interest. And the day before it's like, hey, open world zombie game, Cool. Yeah. Oh no, this is a train wreck. Oh my. So like I end up following the story because initially it's something that like I would like to play this, but oh no, it's not panning out.
Nobody should try and play this because this is a scam.
Yeah. But yeah. I just make stuff I'm interested in. A lot of MMOs and RPGs, but I'll dabble in other genres as well because I like playing different games because like we just said, I no longer want one game for 5,000 hours. I rather try different games. So yeah, thanks for having me, dude. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Thank you for making the time. We'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong. Stay safe. Peace out.